I'm super excited today to have Leti and Kenji on the GM show. A couple months ago, I had an opportunity to learn about your story, and I was super inspired with your background and your journey. And I think what's most inspiring for me as a father and a husband is it just feels like your family is really important, and you've worked really hard in your lives to provide wealth and freedom to really be present with your kids. And just in the short time that us three have chatted this afternoon, I can just tell you guys are great human beings. And I'm just so thrilled to have you on the podcast. So I hope you guys are both having a great day. I think for those that may have not heard your story, would you guys mind maybe sharing at a high level how you got to be where you're at today, and specifically, yeah, what's your story?
Well, first of all, thank you, Brian, for having us here. It's really a joy to be able to spend some time with you and get to know you and get to share what we have done with real estate, and hopefully will inspire others to, believe maybe what they think is impossible right now is actually possible. I know that when we started this journey, we had no idea we were going to end up where we are now. We didn't really know what was possible. We set big goals for ourselves, and we far exceeded anything we ever thought we were going to do. So we're excited to share that. Yeah, so I'm Leti, this is Kenji, and we're both physicians by training. I'm family medicine trained, he's internal medicine trained, but we met as hospitalists, so we were kind of the general doctors of the hospital. And how we started investing in real estate together, because Kenji had been investing beforehand, and he can kind of tell you about his journey too, because I think it's relevant, especially knowing where we are right now in the market cycle. We started investing together in 2015 when, like I think many people, we realized that we were trading our time for money, coming out of reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and realizing that we really needed to create another source of income outside of our day jobs. Otherwise, we were going to spend the rest of the time of our lives. We were both hospitalists working week on, week off, which meant we would work like 86 hours a week, and we could see these hospitalists ahead of us just totally burned out, and also in a situation they were kind of splitting weeks because they had family, they had kids, and they needed somebody to be home on the weekends. So we could see that we were already not seeing each other very often because we were already working, both of us, more than full time. I actually was working training residents on the side, and Kenji had a startup on the side. But we could see that this life of working week on, week off, and having kids and having a life that we really truly would love was not going to work on the current path. And so that's why we decided to start investing in real estate. And our goal was to replace our clinical incomes with real estate. And we set the goal of doing it in 7 years when we first started. We were actually looking for a primary home initially, and decided we were putting all that money. So instead of until primary home, we were going to rent, and we were going to invest it into real estate. So we started with little duplexes outside of the Seattle area, and kind of grew our portfolio. We got to a point where we actually had about 45 doors in 3 years, and we were like, oh my gosh, we're financially free at this point. But we've continued to grow our portfolio, and today we're over 180 doors, multiple states. We have long-term rentals, short-term rentals. We have from single-family homes to a portion of 160 unit that we own. We've also raised money for 2,300 doors at this point as general partners. And, why we keep going is it's really about our purpose and our community. We have a really phenomenal community of doctors and high income earners at Semi-Retired MD. And we love helping them build their own portfolios and get themselves freedom through real estate. And so that's why we continue to do what we do, even though we could totally be chilling on the beach somewhere. Do you want to add on to kind of your story before we started investing together?
Yeah, I think it is relevant to the times because I started investing in 2001, and it was there was a recession that happened right after 9/11, and then started investing then, and also invested through the 2008 downturn, and so investing for over 25 years. And having invested through those times, when I look at what happened during COVID and what happened more recently with mortgage rates, interest rates going up, and the change in the industry, it's very similar to what happened back in 2001, 2008. Different, right? It's different, but there are a lot of kind of similarities in terms of you know with the market changes, buyers and sellers, sitting on the sidelines, it's so interesting when people take our course. It doesn't matter what's going on. They're always like, is this a good time to invest? Because either the market's too hot, or it's COVID, or mortgage rates are higher, right? And the question's always the same: should I invest? Is this a good time to invest? And when we started in 2015, people were saying, don't invest because it's been 7, 8 years since the last downturn and another downturn is coming. And we're really glad we didn't listen to that because it was a pretty great run up from 2015 to 2021, right, in real estate. So, yeah, so I think that, my background was learning a lot of lessons from investing in 2008, especially, and using those lessons. Some of those lessons were a lot of mistakes that I made. I lost money on a number of deals, but it really kind of formed the foundation of what we do right now in our investing and what we teach as well, because we really invest in a way where you can get through any recession, right? Because we focus on cash flow.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the back story, and it's just I'm inspired by listening to your story, and it's coming out in your faces just how much joy you guys have helping other people. And I think whether a physician is listening today or maybe like a working professional working that amount of hours, I'm curious if you could walk through what was that aha moment that kind of really led to sitting down and looking at each other and saying, let's do something different. And can you walk through what it was about real estate that was so attractive? And did you look at other things other than real estate? And do you mind sharing maybe some of those learnings as you've kind of had to come to Jesus on we can do things differently?
Yeah, such a great question. I would say this all started about 6 months before we actually made the decision to choose real estate. And how it started was we got married that September, and we chose real estate in January, actually right
Wow.
around New Year's. But before we were married, one of the things that Kenji asked me is, how do you want to lead your life? Like, what do you want our lives together to look like? And I had started kind of explaining this journey that we were already going down, like, hey, let's get this house in Seattle. We're going to have a family, blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, 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 as if you have no limits. Like, money's not an issue. Like, what would you do with your time? Like, what would you really want our lives to look like? And I said, well, I'd like us to be able to spend 3 months a year, like in Italy. I'd like us to be able to have a place where we can invite our friends and they can stay with us as long as we want. I want to produce olive oil, and I want to learn how to be a really great host. Like, that's what I would like to spend my time doing, is learning to host on top of everything else. And that was like not in the cards at that point, because taking 3 months off, having a house in Italy, like learning to produce olive oil, like just it was so far out there. And we didn't really have a plan at that point of like, how do we get there? But when we read Rich Dad Poor Dad that late December, we were actually on a trip together and reading it out loud to each other. We read it out loud to each other. As we read it out loud to each other, things just started to click, and we started to say, hey, this is how we get there. This is how we stop trading time for money as employees. This is how we have another source of income coming in every single month. This is how we are able to take 3 months off at a time. This is how we get to that vision of what we really wanted. And so, yeah, I'll let you take the story from there of like, why real estate, and did we consider anything else?
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to kind of build on was, as you were talking, I realized what I did, or what the question I was asking was, what is the result you're looking for? And so our mentor teaches something called RPM, which is what's the result you're looking for? Why do you want to achieve that?
That's a
That's
purpose.
the purpose. And then M is massive action plan. What's your plan? So the how is kind of in the M, but it comes last. You got to start out with the result you're looking for.
Yeah.
And I think
And why it's important.
why it's
And,
important.
for
Exactly.
us, it was so clearly important to spend more time together
Hmm.
Yeah.
and to have a family where we could actually be there with our kids and not feel like they got the short end of the stick because we were always working.
Right.
Yeah.
And so many people start out with the how, and that's the problem. It's called the tyranny of the how. And so you really want to start with the result. And I think for anybody listening, maybe this could be an aha moment for you to kind of say, what is the result that I really want
For my life.
if there were no limits, right? And what would I want life to look like? Again, if there were no limits and I could, I had that time and location freedom, what I want it to look like is, I think, a really good starting point. And then the why is super important because that's what's going to really pull you through some of the challenging times, especially with any new endeavor. There's going to be some challenges. And so getting to your kind of why real estate, for me, it was something that I had been doing for a long time. It was something my parents did. And so I was very familiar with it, very comfortable with it. And at the time, I don't think I really we didn't really look at a lot of other options. But now looking back, what I can say is that I think real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth quickly. Another way would be starting a business. But most people who are, high income professionals, doctors, I don't know that starting a new business is in the cards, but real estate is something that is accessible, something that can be done, something that somebody who's smart and driven can learn how to do well.
And do on the side.
And do on the
I mean,
side.
I think a
Yeah.
startup is more challenging to do on the side and also
Yeah.
riskier, right?
Mhm.
Riskier versus buying a building is buying a business that's already running. And there's already customers. Everybody needs a home. And there's already the systems and processes. There's property managers and contractors, and they're already trained how to do their jobs. It's like a totally different level of work versus starting a startup.
And also comes with the tax benefits, right? So I think that when you compare the two options, start a business versus invest in a rental business, actually is what you're really doing.
Yeah.
That rental business comes with amazing tax benefits. So ultimately, it was the right path for us. And I think it's a great path for a lot of people who are looking to build that wealth quickly and to be able to do something on the side along with their day job.
I think the other thing we saw was when he was in the 2008 kind of crash,
Hmm.
what he had was he had one multifamily property that he ended up increasing rents on. It was like a, B minus class, B?
Mhm.
What would you say?
Yeah, because
That he actually ended up selling in 2009 at his profit because he increased rents. And then he had all this raw land that didn't make any money, that lost a ton of value, that he was then having to support out for his mortgage. And so when we were choosing real estate, we were very clear, like we needed cash flow. We were not going to buy things like raw land that eats 3 meals a day. And we wanted to buy BC class multifamily because we wanted to really build something that had tenants that were going to need the housing no matter what it was, whether or not it was a, downturn or whether or not it was, a great market. Um, and then, over time we added other real estate, but I think that was the initial thinking. And I think the other thing that we really realized once we started on this path, we didn't really fully realize to the extent of it before we started on the path, but was the tax benefits and the ability to shelter both our clinical incomes from taxes. And so when we started investing in 2015, we had him cut back and get real estate professional status. And that allowed us to not pay any taxes. We didn't pay any federal income taxes for 7 years. That was huge for us because that meant every year we got a check back from the IRS that we could reinvest and we could buy more properties. And, that's how we grew to the rate that we grew. It wasn't that we had millions of dollars saved up. It was that we were reinvesting the same money, all our cash flow, all our tax savings. And then we were, doing cash out refis. We were doing 1031 exchanges. And so that's how we were building to grow our portfolio. But part of the question was, was there, I guess we answered if we considered anything else. So
Yeah. Well, I think I love all of that. There was some really cool things about that. First of all, Italy. I think that's such a cool, like, high level why. And I hope that you're doing that. And if you're not, I think you're down the path. I have a place in my heart for Italy because we named our fourth daughter Florence. It's a family name, and I know that's a city in Italy, so that's really cool. Olive oil, great. Love hearing the story about, or the acronym RPM, right? So results, purpose, which is your why, and then massive
action.
action. Okay, so I think I love all this, and I'm really excited to dive into real estate. But before we do, I think one thing that I know is doctors make good money, and there aren't, like, not everyone was in your position making that much income. And at face value, I think someone could listen to this podcast and say, well, they had it easy. They were doctors. And it's like, what I'm learning from this is it feels like you two like came together and you had a goal. And I'm really interested, once you made that decision that you wanted to replace your physician income with cash flowing income that created more freedom, what processes did you set up to like hold yourselves accountable? And was there ever a moment in those first couple months or first 6 months, year, where it's just like, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. I'm working this much. You're working this much. We now are having kids. Like, was there ever a moment where it's like, let's just hang up this desire to go to Italy and let's just be physicians? Like, I've got to believe there's some of that in there that doesn't come out, but I want to hear it, you
Yeah.
know? I don't know,
Yeah.
anything, or you guys just, I don't know, any thoughts around that?
Well, I think it helped that we were seeing progress. I would say the first 4 months were kind of slow. We tried to train our residential real estate agent who had been trying to help us find a primary home. We tried to train him to be a real estate investor agent, and he couldn't do it. It was totally inappropriate to try to train him to be an investor real estate agent. And he was an expert in Seattle. We were trying to train him, to go to markets, an hour out, right? Because that's where we could find cash flow. So it was really helpful to us in April. We had 2 properties under contract that we actually purchased. And so we had a property or 2 before that we got under contract that we didn't buy. But then in April, we had 2 properties under contract. So that was really helpful to be able to see progress. I don't know if we ever had a time. The first time that we had that you were like, hey, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, was actually when we had financial freedom. It was so interesting that I can think of. I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember anything.
I think there are always moments during the journey when you do get either stuck or you're not making as much progress or there's some type of challenge or curveball, right, that you have to deal with. I think, just imagine like, people tagging that fence, right, like multiple times. And I painted that fence, painted over it multiple times. They tagged it again. And so, things like that, right? Tenants crashing into a pole and almost collapsing the garage, right? It could be another one. So there's always like things like that happen. But I think that's where that kind of the purpose, the why, really helps, because it kind of pulls you through. Again, if you one look at your kid and your family and you go, okay, this is something that there's a reason why we're doing this, because we want to have more time together. We want to have that freedom, and it's all worth it. I think another really important point here is that looking at is the stories that you tell in your head, right? And you can have 2 people look at the same circumstance, the same thing that happens, and one person could say it's the end of the world, and the other person could say, oh, this is an opportunity for me to learn something, right? And you can have 2 completely different perspectives, and what's cool is that you get to choose which perspective you want to have. And I think that's kind of the one thing, and we didn't actually have this formal training
On
on mindset and how to think through these types of things until a number of years into our journey. But what I can say is that after going through that mindset training, it really actually helped us take off, because there were a lot of things that were holding me back, in particular from the fears about scaling up, for example. Because up to that point, when we had 40 some units, we had only bought a 6 unit and
at
thinking
$300,000. So we hadn't bought any big property.
yeah, thinking about
Yeah.
buying a 100 unit was like just another level. And now in the last 3 years, we've added about 1,500 units of syndicated doors. Right? So just to kind of, there's, like I said, there's always challenges, but the real question is, how do you handle those challenges, and do you suffer through them? Because, or, do you kind of go, okay, just like brush it off and just keep going.
Yeah, I do want to comment on how we kind of kept moving in the very beginning too, because I think that's an important question. What we set were goals for each year. And so every year what we would do is we'd do a time capsule, like December 31st, of like where we thought we were going to be the year before. So it was actually it was more fun than goal setting, because it was almost like, hey, let's see what we could do. And then we would seal it up. We would each do one, and we'd seal it up until the next December 31st. That's when we'd open it and look what we said. And we had laid out the goal, let's completely replace our clinical incomes in 7 years. We just literally had set the intention as well that like every dollar that we have extra is going to go into this. We did things like house hacking, where we lived in a duplex. We lived upstairs. My parents lived with us for a bit, and they said this is the worst neighborhood we've ever lived in. They lived in Papua New Guinea. for 7 years, okay? So it was a rough neighborhood. We had people who were squatting in that property who broke in during the rehab. Like, it was not the nicest neighborhood. We made a lot of choices that I think a lot of doctors wouldn't make. Like you're talking about, hey, doctors have it easy. I have to admit we had more income than a lot of people have, right? So that did make it easier. But I think it was also still challenging to save for us. We still had to figure out, how do we save more? We still had to use the velocity money to be able to grow our portfolio of forcing appreciation and then using it to buy next property. We liquidated one of our 401ks. Like, we did those kind of things when we ran out of money, got very creative, because I think no matter who you are, actually, as a real estate investor, you run out of money, and you run out of money multiple times,
Yeah.
especially when you have access to great deals. And so you have to get creative and you have to figure it out. And sometimes when you have a clear purpose, you will make choices that maybe people look at from the outside that say, hey, you're house hacking in a duplex. Like, that's kind of crazy as two full-time doctors with a 12-month-old, right? But
Yeah.
kind of like, it was worth it for us because it aligned us on our goals. We didn't trade up our cars. We cut back spending. Like, we did those things because that's what needed to be done to get to the goal. And our goal was fast fire, which is get to financial freedom as fast as possible. We didn't want to be there when we were like 50 or 60. We wanted to get there, in a matter of years. So again, we could watch our kids grow up. That's what we really wanted to do. And now we live in Puerto Rico, and we have a nanny who homeschools our kids. So we literally see them for breakfast and lunch and dinner every single day. And when we travel, they travel with us because they're homeschooled. They don't have to be stuck in school while we're gone to some event. So they travel around the world with us. And again, we didn't know this was what our life was going to look like, but we were very aligned in what we wanted. We wanted freedom, and we wanted our kids. We wanted to be there with each other. That was like actually number one, was time with each other, and then time with our kids as they grew up.
Man, it's so inspiring hearing your story. And, looking at semi MD or semi retired MD, like, you look at your story, and obviously we're seeing the success of all that hard work. But what I love is, like, I don't think there are any shortcuts. And for you two coming from where you did to go and house hack a duplex, I think that's what it takes. I mean, there's just no shortcuts. And I think sometimes we see the success and it's so easy to, like, want that so fast. But it's clear to me that you guys, like, you were your mindset, like you mentioned, you were aligned, and you went and got after it. And it's really inspiring. What's interesting to me is I talk to people, because we're a syndication group as well. And I'd be curious to know what you guys think. If someone wants to get into real estate or buy an asset that's cash flowing, let's say it's a couple, maybe in their 30s, what do you think about starting out on the syndication level versus going and kind of buying your own duplex, fourplex, whatever that may be? Do you guys coach or advise a certain avenue in which might work or maybe worked for you? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, we do both actually, right? So we both syndicate and we also buy our own properties. And the reason why we do both businesses is because we know that the majority of high income earners, doctors, they have their careers, jobs. They actually want to invest passively. That's the reality. A smaller subset want to buy their own properties. What I will say though is that we believe, and we've experienced ourselves, that owning your own properties does help you build wealth faster than a passive investment. I mean, you can just look at the returns. For a passive investment, you might do a 2x equity multiple, which might be about a 15% annual return, right? So that could be a typical syndication investment. If you think of a property that you buy on your own, you add up the cash flow, which alone could be 10, 15, 20% return, right? Add on to that debt pay down, where the renters are paying down your mortgage, and that could add another several percent to your return. And then you add on to that the immediate appreciation, so negotiating a discount on a property, which as a syndicator, we source deals and we get properties at a discount, right? And so you get that benefit if you buy your own property. The forced appreciation, right, by increasing rents, decreasing expenses. So you increase the value of the property, you get all that equity.
And that's the biggest one actually for us. It's built our wealth like 15x
Yeah.
since when we started just with real estate.
Yeah.
Is all these combination.
And then you add on the tax savings, right? And you get the tax benefits of being able to shelter not just your cash flow, but also you shelter your income as well, which is an added benefit on top of, sheltering the return that you're getting from your real estate. You're actually going outside of that real estate portfolio and sheltering your personal income.
Yeah.
So that's a really unique benefit. So I think when you kind of compare them head to head, I think that there's no question that owning your own properties earns you more. But at the end of the day, a number of people, and I'd say the majority, choose to invest passively, accept the lower returns because they don't want to have to either learn the skill or take the time to do it.
I will also add that when you learn how to invest yourself, that's a financial education, like in Rich Dad Poor Dad, that you have for your whole life. It's a skill set. It really sets you free because if you lose your job or something happens in your life, you have an ability to make money a different way. So I think it's extremely freeing to be able to do that. And I also think you're a better passive investor when you learn to invest on your own real estate and you kind of learn a lot of what to look for in deals, because I think it's very challenging as an investor who doesn't know much about real estate to really look at a passive investment and really evaluate the cash and cash return and really say, are these assumptions appropriate? I think that's a challenging thing to do as a passive investor. And then lastly, if you're going to lead a syndication, I think it's really a phenomenal thing to have experience investing your own real estate again, because you now have practice. I think all of us have seen over the last few years people entering syndication space because there was quote unquote easy money to make, but people didn't actually know what they were doing. And it's gotten
Yeah.
people in trouble for sure.
Yeah, and I've been in this role for about a year now. I've always had a passion for real estate, but if we were to have this conversation like a year before and you were talking about real estate professional and bonus depreciation and how to look at rent growth, like I don't really think I could have been able to understand it fully. And so I think I'm just saying that because I was with a doctor a couple weeks ago that I'd love to introduce you to, but him and his wife want to invest in real estate, but they have this paralysis by analysis because of all these big terms.
Hmm.
There's two sides to it. There's the educational side on how to learn, and then there's the actual doing and managing the asset. And so I don't know if you guys are offering those types of services, or if you could at a high level just maybe for our listeners that know they want to invest in their own deals or a syndication, how can someone develop kind of the knowledge and confidence that they can do it? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, well, one of our mentors says success leaves clues. And so what I would say is that if you want to learn how to buy your own rentals, even if you want to learn how to invest in syndications, you want to follow somebody who's doing exactly what it is you want to achieve and learn from them. It'll shortcut and literally, as our mentor says, it'll take what takes decades to learn and turn it into days, right? And you can learn something so quickly if you have the right mentor. And so, yeah, that is something that we do. We teach people how to invest in real estate. We teach people how to take advantage of the tax benefits. On the syndication side, we have a lot of education about investing passively in syndications. And so, yeah, so certainly I think education is absolutely the key. And and then going out and doing it, I think is really important. Something that I wanted to bring up from earlier was that so many people are focused on what they're going to get. And I think it's so much more important to think about it in terms of who you're going to become. And that's why I think it's worthwhile to invest the time to learn these things so that you can become the type of investor or type of person who can go out and make money with real estate. You have that confidence. It really changes how people show up at work because they know at the back of their mind, whether they bought a property or not, they know in the back of their mind, they've become the type of person who can go out and make money with real estate. Or doesn't apply. It applies to anything, right? Any skill that you get, whether it's AI, right? Or whether it's starting a business, right? Once you have those skills, you have a different level of confidence that you can go out and do it and replicate it.
Yeah, and how do you actually learn the terminology and the pieces like that? I think there's a limited amount of terminology, and I think a lot of it is just It's education. It's putting some time and energy and effort into it. Kenji and I we spend a lot of money every single year getting an education. I mean, we're always learning things. We're reading books all the time. We go to conferences all the time. We, go in podcasts where we learn something from the person all the time. So we really have a focus on our growth, our personal growth. And I think if you invest in that and you become more every single year, like the becoming piece, I think that's the best investment you can make. We have the opportunity to have Ray Dalio come in and talk to
Oh
at one of the
boy.
conferences that we attend. They've been talking about a recession and an economy, kind of maybe even crash the last couple of years. And one of the things they've said is invest in yourself and your skill set and your resourcefulness, because the truth is we don't fully know what's coming with AI and what's going to happen in the next year in the market. But if you've invested in yourself and your skill set and your resourcefulness and your mindset, you're going to be in a lot better situation than if you haven't invested in those things. So would really encourage you guys to be active learners, constantly learning, and invest and if you're going to spend money, invest in yourself. That's the biggest expense that we have since 2019 is literally we invest so much into our personal education every single year. And
Yeah.
it's not only the education piece, actually, it's being in the room with the other people who are also pursuing their education and learning at that level, because those are the people who are going to do really unique things, and getting to be around them sets a standard for you of what's possible. It pushes you to dream even bigger because you see what other people are doing and you see the standards that they have for themselves. You can share resources with them. Sometimes you can partner with them. Sometimes you can invest in their company. And, honestly, in the end, when we look back on this in 30 years, I suspect that a lot of our growth of our wealth that happens, from this point onward is actually going to be in investing in other people's businesses and things like that because of the connections we've made. I highly encourage everybody to invest in your education over anything else.
Yeah. Well, that really resonates with me. And I appreciate you guys saying that. I have such a desire to learn myself. And what I'm finding, and I'm curious kind of what your framework is. Two things I'm learning from you guys. One, you have mentors. Two, you're surrounding yourself with really good people that are helping you and you're helping them. But three, you have an obsession. I call it an obsession, like of investing in you. And so one thing that I'm trying to navigate, and I'm guessing some of my listeners are as well, is I'm married, I have kids, I have a job, I have a farm, I have my hobbies. And then I'm finding that like social media distracts me. I'm
Mhm.
finding that I'm so tired. Like last night, I'm with my wife watching a show on Netflix, and 5 minutes in, I'm gone. Like I'm just asleep. And I'm like, I guess I'm telling you this, and I'm going to follow up with a question, and that is, how, knowing you guys are a partnership, you have kids, you're traveling, you are going to conferences, do you have a framework that you've set up to try to hold yourself accountable to this piece of educating yourself and developing yourself? And what has worked well for the both of you that maybe our listeners could apply today to get to where they want to go?
Um, One of the things that we did was in 2019, we both committed to do this mastermind, this Tony Robbins mastermind, that literally meant that we were going to travel every single month. And we said, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this for the year. And back then, it was pre-COVID. It really was traveling every single month. And keep in mind at that point, Kenji was a moonlighter, so he was working, shifts at the hospital, but he didn't have to have a schedule that he did. We had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. We had the real estate portfolio. We had semi-retired MD as well, and I had a half-time job. And so we were like, we're going to do this. How are we going to do this? We're like, we have no idea, but we're going to figure it out. And we signed up. And so what that meant was effectively, we traveled someplace every single month, and we were in conferences, let's say for on average 5 days a month, 5 to 6 days a month. Then we're traveling on, the front and the back. We took our kids with us, our 1-year-old and our 3-year-old, and we had an au pair. We took her with us. And our au pair, we gave a week off after every conference because she was the person during the conferences. We were gone like a lot of hours because Tony
Yeah.
Robbins, he goes from 9 in the morning until 2 a.m.
Wow.
Seriously. And so, first of all, we learned to manage our energy. We learned a lot of limiting beliefs we had about exhaustion and the stories we would tell each other and ourselves. And we kind of changed our mindsets about it. But then also we had to get so efficient because we literally built our business on the in between, right? Because 2 weeks a month, like we don't have we have, we're in a conference and we don't have childcare. Okay. 1 week a month I'm working as a doctor, 86 hours. And then we have 1 week a month off together where we have time. And we just got super efficient. We had to cut things that, we didn't like, weren't going to kind of serve us anymore. We had to make those tough decisions. But it was so great because we had to build everything else around our decision to grow. And we've continued to make that decision every single year. Like every single year I do 2 masterminds. Kenji doesn't always. He kind of chooses what fits for him. And I build my whole life around that. Now, one thing people could say is like, oh, well, you're not around your kid for like a week a month. That's a big thing to your kids to give up. For us, we realized how much better parents we became because of it. We realized, it served our kids to be able to do that. And also, we, over time, have also had them spend a lot more time with their grandparents than they ever would have done. So now they have a deeper relationship with my parents than they would have if we were always around. So I guess what I'd like to tell everybody is there's upsides and downsides of every decision that you make. And ultimately, you have to make the decisions that fit for you, that align with your values. Learning and improving yourself is one of your core values, and you believe it's important enough and it's going to help the lives of your loved ones as well, then you prioritize it and you make the choices that work for you. And when it no longer works, you change it. That's the thing about it, is like you can make a decision this year that doesn't work for you next year and you change it. And you have that freedom to change your mind anytime. And people forget that. They think, hey, I'm signing up for this, it's going to be forever. That's not the case. You can change whatever doesn't work for you.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it back to RPM and talk about the which is the massive action plan, right? And of course, we talk about the result you want and maybe the result. And that's another area where you have to be crystal clear on what the result you want is. For us, it was really important for us to work on our mindsets for a number of different reasons, not just our relationship, but for me, I wanted to change how through generations, how we were raised as kids, right? And so I wanted to kind of change that.
You wanted to be a different father.
Yeah, I wanted to be a different
father.
Was, yeah,
right?
Yeah. And then actually, if you just go back generations, every father, right, multiple generations back, they raised their kids exactly the same way. I wanted to be the dad that actually changed that. And I knew I needed a new model for that, right? A new model of how to think about that. Yeah, I wanted to be a better dad. And so those are some of the drivers, some of the results. But the M is something I wanted to really talk about because most people take little actions, right? They don't take massive action. For us, massive action looked like investing $230,000 on a mastermind, which we didn't have. And we knew that we needed to commit a couple weeks a month for the next 12 months in order to make this happen. And so one of the other results that came out of that was we're going to make this money back, which we did.
Yeah,
right?
in 4 months.
In 4 months.
We monetized, built a course in that week off, and made back all that money and $1,000 extra,
Right.
like in 4 months, because we were so committed and focused on it and directed and efficient and like driven. And so one of the best things you can do for yourself is spend money and like show up like you never did before. And before that, we had no coaching. We had never spent any money on that stuff.
Oh, it was scary.
And yeah, no, it's a huge step for us, but thank God we did spend that money.
Oh yeah, no regrets at all. And I think anybody who's like thinking about taking our course, and I just had a conversation the other day, and it's like, well, let me think about it, right? And it's just like, our mentor says, never leave the scene of a decision without taking,
action,
right?
To make sure you follow through.
That's
and
right.
Ideally, you take public action so other people know about what you're going to do, so that you make sure you follow through, because it's so easy to make excuses later on. So
I did want to mention one thing, Brian, about the exhaustion, because I can really relate to that.
Both of us can.
Yeah.
We used to be so exhausted.
Yeah. And I think, part of it is the meaning that we place on anything, right? So, I talked earlier about you could two people can have two different meanings and thoughts about the same event, right? And
Yeah.
so, you can think about your day and you can say it was an amazing day, or you can say I didn't get anything done today, right? You can choose, right? And probably
Yeah.
both are probably true,
Both are
right?
probably true. It's what you choose to focus on,
And
right?
what do you choose to focus on
Right.
exactly? So
And that creates the quality of your life.
yeah, so I think that that's kind of one kind of major thing that will really change the quality of your life. I think the other thing that will eliminate or address the exhaustion is if you have something that you are contributing to, some kind of contribution where you are serving something greater than yourself, right? Something more than yourself, outside of yourself, then that will literally pull you up any mountain, right? And that will literally take away that exhaustion because you wake up with this passion of like, I want to go serve, I want to go help. And that's what we do, right? With our students, the people who go through our courses, all the people we coach, there's just a real mission there. And our mission is we want to help people live lives they love. It's not even about real estate. We want to help people live lives they love. Real estate's a vehicle, but the mindset work, right? The meaning that we just talked about, that also is a huge component of it. And we build that into our courses because we know how important that is. And so those are just some thoughts that hopefully maybe could help.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And thank you for sharing that. Um, I do want to be cognizant of the time we have together, but I gotta ask the question. So it sounds like, I mean, you're buying real estate. You're also physicians. You decided we're going to go all in on ourselves. We're into these masterminds. You spend, did I hear correctly, $230,000 on yourselves. And what I heard was 4 weeks later,
4 months.
4 months later in that time, you had built a business. And it sounds like more of like an educational vehicle or a course. And maybe you can share what you do there. But you had an idea, you created it, and you somehow marketed it. Okay, so how did you do that? Because that's a fascinating story.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had been blogging for a year to that point and doing it for free. We had made $1,000 on our business in 2018, and we signed up for this mastermind in 2019 in March, and we sold our first course in July. And what we did was we leveraged affiliates. We leveraged relationships we had with other people who had our ideal customer avatar, our other physicians who sold our courses for us because we didn't have a whole lot of following. And so I would say we leveraged their communities to be able to reach more people. I think we got partially lucky because it was 2019. It was before the 2020, but this still, new online business and courses were kind of relatively new. And then there was a lot of pent up demand because we had been blogging and we had had a community for like a year and we literally had not sold anything to them. We
Cool.
didn't have anything to sell. And so I think it was a combination of definitely some luck, definitely relationships. I don't know if you guys have read Gary Keller's The One Thing. It's the
Mm-mm.
best book, but it
Yeah.
says, what's the one thing that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? That's the question you're supposed to ask yourself all the time. Keeps you focused on the one thing. It's almost always relationships. That's really the one thing. And so that was the one thing that made the biggest difference for us was our relationships with other people who had our ideal customer avatar and were able to help us sell our course. So we basically did a little beta program with 10 people. For 8 weeks, we were teaching it live every week, live as in, online. Like we were at Tony Robbins events in Amsterdam at 2 a.m. in the morning, teaching our live thing to people in the US and we did that for 10 weeks. And at the end of it, we're like, we're going to sell it and we're going to build it as we go. So we sold it. And then each week we produced the content for that week. And it was, it was kind of crazy, but we were so driven. We had such a strong why again. And
Mhm.
we had put ourselves in this financial situation where we're like, we are going to make this thing up. Like we had such clarity of the outcome that we wanted because when we signed up for this mastermind, we had so much money at stake. We said, we're going to get so much out of this and we're gonna, show up at every event every single month, and we're gonna make this money back this year. That was our goal for the program, and so we did it.
Well, yeah, I wanted to mention
And it
that
wasn't easy.
the relationships are absolutely important. And there's another book called Who Not How,
Benjamin Hardy.
which is a more recent book, but it's exactly the same principle that we used back then without knowing, that this was a who, not how. So it's not how do you do it, but who can help you achieve that result, right? And the other thing I wanted to mention was I think the mindset training too is really important.
Oh yeah, we were unleashed because we had recognized now limiting beliefs. And so anything that we said to ourselves about I can't do this or it can't be done or it's impossible, we would just be like, well, that's a limiting belief. That's not true. And so it kind of takes away every excuse you have.
And so, yeah, a lot of it is just everyone's capable. It's just a matter of getting out of your own way. And a lot of that is just the mental blocks that are there that keep you from doing what you need to do. So, for example, when we were filming the course during the 1 week that we had, that we weren't traveling or that she wasn't working, we could have easily said, I can't do this. We don't have the time. But we were like, that's just a limiting belief. Of course we can do this, right? We'll figure out how.
Yeah. And then persistence. I mean, yeah, if something doesn't work, you try something else. Like first we tried to sell a coaching program and then we just decided like, this isn't working. This is not exactly what we want to do. Let's pivot. And then one of our friends had just started a course and we were like, oh, let's do that. So again, a friend with an idea influenced us. And so it was just, yeah, it was a lot of pieces coming together, but really literally it was putting ourselves in the situation, having clarity of what we need of our outcome and our why of why we wanted to do it, and then having the right people, and then having given already for a year without ever asking for anything else.
For a year.
Yeah.
Really helped us for sure.
Yeah. I love how you gave and gave and gave. And then that came to fruition where you were then able to build a community and start charging for courses. So once again, I'm inspired to educate myself, find mentors, but you guys are gritty and like, I can just tell you guys get after it. It's just
We do.
you just get freaking after it, man. You're not at the beach ever in Puerto Rico, are you?
I do want to add one more thing. Niching down is so key for people as well.
Like niche, yeah.
We sold how to own your own rental properties for physicians. And we could speak to the pain point because we were those people. We were the people who didn't have freedom, who were working all the time, who were missing out on our future kids, were missing out on our relationship. And so we understood the pain points and we niched down to the people that we love to serve. And so they knew we were talking to them. And this was an area where physicians were not served in real estate, right? A lot of real estate is created for the general public, created for people maybe bootstrapping or flipping or wholesaling. Physicians don't want to do any of that stuff. They want to save on taxes and they want to build up cash flow as fast as possible. That's what they want to do. It's a totally different outcome and a different pain point. And so niching is really important. And a lot of people would say, oh my gosh, teaching physicians to own their own rental properties, that's a niche of a niche of a niche. There's 1 million doctors in the US. Like how many of them actually want to own their own rental properties? Second year, multi-million-dollar business, right? So niche, don't be afraid to niche.
Love that. I love that. And so my thought now is, Kenji, you kind of mentioned, I think you alluded to like, what is it that when you wake up, you were talking about energy and just overcoming exhaustion. And it's like finding that thing that when you wake up, you have an energy to go and do that. And there's a why for the both of you now in your careers. What are you most excited about right now that when you wake up just gets you really fired up and it's like, you're getting after it? What would you say for the both of you that's just got you guys really excited?
So one of the things that I think is really important is to set those goals or clear results that you're after. And so it can be certainly work related, but it can also be something like, I just did this hike 29029.
I've done that. You've done that.
Yeah. So
cool.
yeah. So
good.
So get a group of friends together and do it, and it was the coolest experience and really cool experience, right? But that's a goal for a period of time. Then you kind of have your next goal, right? And so, yeah, I'm one of the things that I've learned to do. I wasn't always like this, but I've learned to take things that I'm scared of doing and go getting after it. And so in previous years, it was let's do a national conference, right? And that was something like, oh no, like, we don't want to do that. And there's all these excuses of why not, right? And so we did that. We did a national conference 2 years in a row. That was pretty amazing.
Increasing your threshold of control.
Right. That's what it is. It's like, if you think about kind of like, all the things that you do in a circle, and then if you do something outside of that circle, then
you're going to have fear,
you're going
first
to
of all.
have fear because the first time you've done it. But once you've done it, then you've increased your threshold of control. And so ultimately what Leti and I are doing constantly is increasing our threshold of control. So whether it's, okay, I've never done a 20-unit property, so let's buy a 20-unit property. I've never done a 100-unit property. I've never syndicated a property. Let's do that, right? So at every step, it's doing something even bigger. And the latest one is, let's bring property management in-house, and I'll form my own property management company, right? So it's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's those types of things. It's on the business side, it's building a team, right? It's all these new challenges that we're always facing. Starting a new business now. Leti has started a new business called Biara, where she's really passionate about helping.
Hey, don't take my thing.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that's your thing. Okay, all right. Well, then you go for that. Yeah, you go tell them about that one.
No, but I just want to echo what you're saying, which is, number one, we have fear. We still have fear. Whenever we do something that we have never done before, we still have fear. We still have our brain tell us all these reasons it's going to fail. We still and we still mess up, right? There are times where we do things and we try things and they don't work, and we have to pivot and we have to figure it out and we have to try something different. So I want to normalize fear, and I want to normalize that things don't always work and you have to figure it out.
And normalize failures and mistakes as well.
Right? Because, yeah, I mean, we've had properties that didn't work out well. We've had business ideas that were total flops. We've had failures. And every time we do something new, we have fear. So I want to set that up. So this year I started a company called Biara, and why was to help female entrepreneurs make more profit and do so with more ease, because I'm very passionate about leading a business and being the best business leader you can be, but also female entrepreneurs being able to create more profits. Even though females own about 40% of businesses in the US right now, make 6% of the profits. So it's like a lot smaller businesses that are not creating the profits. And a lot of men are having with their businesses. And I believe women, when they have those profits, are going to do really phenomenal things for the world. And actually, even studies have shown that when women make money, they contribute to the community at a totally different level. And so I'm really passionate about more women owning businesses and owning successful businesses and making money and being able to change how the world is run with that money. And so that gets me so excited. And I started with a mastermind, and I just love the people in it. They just light me up, and teaching them and watching them. I mean, for both of us, honestly, it's like watching our people transform, watching their successes is the best thing for us. We get to see it. We get to feel the pride in them, and to see people light up and to see them change their lives and get back control and gain what they want and how excited they are. That's the best. You can be quote unquote exhausted or tired or whatever, and you can get on a coaching call with a group and do it for 2 hours, and you get done and you're like energized because you're like, oh my God, they're doing amazing things. I'm so excited for them.
Yeah.
That's really what this is about for us.
Well, you guys have an incredible story. I wanna conclude with like one last question, and it might be off topic from a real estate standpoint, but like when your kids get older and you get to a point where you're no longer on the earth and your kids are reading your obituary or they're talking about you too, what do you hope are some of the things that they remember most about you, that they are most like proud about as you being their parents?
Good question.
Yeah.
We've never talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very strong opinion.
Okay.
I want them to feel loved as they are. I want them to know that we helped them be individuals, right? Like to to grow up with this self-confidence, and that comes from doing hard things. So I don't want to make it easy for my kids. I know we were kind of alluding to that with your farm life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the, get them that self-confidence because they do have challenges, because they do learn how to, be independent, to ask for what they want, to learn how to be persistent, to have grit. So I want them to have known or have a sense that, first of all, that they were loved, but also that we gave them the skill set to be able to be resourceful.
Hmm.
And then to know that we contributed to others and to have that model for themselves that, the purpose of life, once you've taken care of your own like survival, is contribution to others. And if they have those three things, I'll be happy.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
I agree
beautiful.
with her. That's great. I don't have anything to add to that. That's awesome.
Well, you guys are amazing. I really appreciate your time. I've been inspired. And I guess if someone wanted to get a hold of you too, would it be best like on LinkedIn, or is it through the website? And which of the websites of all your businesses is the best way to like get access to you guys as mentors?
Mm. We have a podcast called Doctors Building Wealth, and that's
Okay.
really for the semi-retired MD community. And so,
Okay.
yeah, we welcome you to listen to Doctors Building Wealth. In Biara, for female entrepreneurs, I have a Build and Scale Boldly podcast. You can definitely find us both on LinkedIn, just, under our names. We, have websites as well. But I do think that if you're talking about like, hey, how do you learn from us? It really is probably listening to our podcasts or reading our blogs,
Cool.
because Kenji still writes in SRMD's blog pretty
Great.
Yeah.
frequently as
I think,
well.
well, I think the
And
podcast is
join our
probably good.
newsletters, right? Because we put out content every single week in our newsletters as well for both Biara Fast Fire Capital, which is our passive investing, and then Semi-Retired MD.
Awesome. I'll make sure I'll try my best to get that out. And thank you once again. I hope you guys have a beautiful night.
Thank you, Brian. We
Thank you.
really enjoyed our conversation with you. And I have to say, those were some good questions, especially the last one. We've never even asked each other that question.
Hmm.
So that was a really good one.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.